So I just want to say, how fortunate are we to have this opportunity the last couple of days to hear and to learn and to respect from these important Native American dignitaries, esteemed leaders here at West Virginia University. And that's such a great honor. And I want to thank Bonnie. I can't say enough what Bonnie has done for our state and for West Virginia University to organize this event. So I'm very proud to say I got to know Bonnie lately. So for those of you that missed the peace tree ceremony, it was my first, and it was very spiritual. And I just want to thank Sidney Hill for sharing the message of peace. As he reminded us, and I quote him, "Just look at the news. You'll see all the conflicts and people. We had prophecies that would be so much war, so much ashes just flying everywhere. It's kind of what's happening today. We are always hoping for peace, spread as much as we can, families and people all over the world." And he reminded us about the eagle being on top of the tree, to listen when the eagle speaks. He is calling for peace. Peace can grow if nurtured. And last evening, we had the opportunity to hear from Faith Keeper Lyons. And he said, listen to the eagle hollow, or yell in my case. Tomorrow is always a mystery. Today, encourage, guide, and be a good example for our young people. They learn from you, good or bad. Let's start here at West Virginia University. Bring peace to our next generation. The white pine tree of peace here at West Virginia University. Visit the tree every once in a while. It is a tall tree that can provide protection and comfort. And someone asked the question, how would you teach young people about being respectful about the Native American culture? And he answered, the best teacher is nature. The rules and the protocol, respect, truth, and share equality. One dish and one spoon. So from today's leaders, we learned so much more about our history, about the passion that they have for their people, the economic development for now and for the future, and most of all, the information they shared to educate us for our Native American history in the future. The one thing I want to say is, you belong here. You are still here. So as we wrap up today and hear from each of our esteemed leaders about their outlooks for the future, let's listen, let's learn, let's respect, but overall, let's educate ourselves and others. So we have the opportunity, wanted to say, give them enough time for an extra 5 or 10 more minutes to tell us what they want us to take away and what they want us to know that's important. And there's so much, so 5 minutes is not much, but so I'm going to let you take turns. Chief Glenna Wallace, would you mind starting?
What do I want you to take away? I want you to take away the fact that our work is not done. And there's something that everybody can do. So as far as I'm concerned, in my particular situation of just finishing with the World Heritage, Ohio has had a reputation of not listening to Native Americans. Ohio has had the reputation of absolutely anyone who came in and said that they were a Native American or a band or a tribe, that they gave credence to them. And so I want people to know there is something significant about being a federally recognized tribe. I want people to know that we always have more work to do. In Ohio, now the world knows that our ancestors were geniuses. And so I want people to realize that our history books are totally incorrect, incomplete, And so somewhere that story must begin to be told, and everyone has an opportunity to do something about that. One of the projects that I have been working on, in addition to the World Heritage, is that many of us had our ancestors lived there, our ancestors died there, and they may be the human remains that are still in museums, in basements, in houses. And we would like to have a Native American cemetery there, where, because we believe that our people are never at rest until they are reunited with Mother Earth. And they are never at rest until they would prefer to be buried near where they lived, where they died. We could afford to bring those human remains home if they are identified as Shawnee, but they never lived in Oklahoma, and we believe their spirit would be more at peace in Ohio. So we would like a Native American cemetery, which has been identified. It's located at Johnson's Farm, which is a Native American, it is a site that Ohio History Connection supervises, and we're going to go and see that tomorrow, if I can find Columbus tonight. What do I still want? What do I want you to take away? I want you to know that we have people, that we are human beings as well. We make mistakes, but we are doing our best to keep our heritage, keep our identity, keep our ceremonies. Some of us are having to fight for our language. And I want you to take away that something that we haven't talked about today very much. We've talked about things that we're proud of. There are things that we are not proud of, or at least that I am not proud of. I am not proud of the high alcoholism rate that Native Americans have. I am not proud of the diabetic rate that Native Americans have. I am not proud of our education dropout that Native Americans have. I am not proud of the small number of students who go on to further their educations. We must address these problems, and we must do the best that we can to improve those situations. I think that gives all of us something, some way that we can help and that we can address situations. And most of all, I want us to keep our identity, and I don't want us to be referred to as savages anymore.
Well, that's going to be hard to follow because she said mostly everything. I just want you to remember that we're still here and we're still strong and we are still fighting. And also to remember that, again, we have lots of work to do, and that no matter what, you know, we can do this. We can do it if we work together and educate. As I said this morning, we need to educate people on tribes. We need to educate people on our representatives, and we need to educate schools, and we need to educate. Education is what we need. So that's all I have. And thank you guys so much for being here, and to know, let's go.
All right. There's going to be an orange team that comes in here, not this weekend, but next weekend, called the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Go Pokes. Just be easy on them. We're having a rough year. But we did get to tour your football field and see that, and send some pictures back to the people. And
Both of them had to have their pictures taken.
yes, we did. One thing I'd like to take for you guys to take away from this event today is the fact that that we need to have more open conversations like the ones that we had today. We need to have meaningful conversations where it's not one-sided. It's where we can communicate, talk back and forth, and come up with a conclusion, a resolution of some sort to move forward, not just have a dialogue and let it be lost. We leave here today and nobody does anything, talks about anything until next year, and we're right back to square one. So we have to advocate, we have to be out there, we have to be on the streets and be in the court systems and be in the education systems to tell our story. You know, our story is not always told correctly. History has not always been kind to the Lenape, and it's not something that we bolster about or anything. We just want it to be told and to history to be told the truthful way. So I hope if anybody gets anything out of this is I appreciate you coming to this and hearing the issues that we have. I'm very pleased with the West Virginia Supreme Court. We did have an Indian child welfare case come to the Supreme Court here in West Virginia about 2 months ago. And myself and our ICW worker came up here and able to testify. And the district courts here didn't see it, but the Supreme Court found it in our favor that we were able to get our Delaware child back to our community. And that was a huge victory here in West Virginia, not only for West Virginia, but the Indian country. So I think just showing that your Supreme Court justices were able to educate themselves on the equal law just goes to what I'm trying to say, is to have opening conversations and with a meaningful dialogue, we're able to communicate and express these concerns and the situations we have. With that, I would say thank you, Wanishi.
So as I reflect upon gathering here with y'all today, we come here because it's important. And for tribal leaders to teach, every one of us are here because we each feel like it's important. Because here in Big 10, Big 12 universities, we have to go and we have to make sure that you're talking to the right people. And so we take this seriously, these invitations, and we can't accept all of them, but we know we have to go where we feel like we can make a difference. So to a man and a woman at this table, each of us feel that way. But this also means that I want you to understand how important us being here is. I want to apologize if I embarrass anyone, but the Tadandaho, the Haudenosaunee here. It's if the Roman Catholic Pope showed up, that's what he is to the Haudenosaunee people. And so for 4 of the tribes here, we involve ourselves at UNESCO and United Nations events. We take our invitations seriously. Our time is only so much. We want to make sure that in Big 12 and Big 10 universities and elsewhere in the country, especially for those of us who are removed, that you're hearing from legitimate authoritative voices, because it's important, because the discussions that occur in academia drives policy. Policy drives what we end up with, regulations and laws. If people don't understand Indian child welfare, we have our kids taken away. If you don't understand the connection between missing and murdered Indigenous women and man camps, bad decisions are made. So we have to have real discussions with real peoples, with real tribal nations. And that's why it's important, these conversations between federally recognized tribes and institutions like universities are important. Niwen Koche.
Okay. Well, I've learned a lot, and I'm very pleased that the leaders who have come here and who have expressed their histories and expressed their observations. And it's very important that institutions like universities and so forth educate the general public of the United States of the history of the first indigenous nations that have been here for forever. They've been here thousands of years. And the issues the conflicts that we face at all times is trying to maintain our lands. It's been a battle, and to maintain our identities. That's fundamentally as important as you heard. And the story is the same as it goes across the whole Turtle Island and the whole Western Hemisphere of the indigenous people that were here with all of their civilizations and all of our inventions and all of our our ways of life, which were very much the same. Basically, the languages that are here are many, many, many different languages, but the foundation of the principles behind those languages is always the same. It's always to be thankful. It's always to be looking for the future. It's always being respectful for life itself. And it's always about peace. And peace is what we really carry that. In spite of everything that's happened to us, our foundational thinking is always peace. And today, as you well know, as you see observance around the world, peace is of the essence now. Now is the time to speak up. And now is the time for all us common folks to talk to the powers that be and express yourself. Express yourself and protect your children and protect your grandchildren. We talk about 7 generations, and every generation is 7 now. Every generation is a 7th. So on a common cause, and really appreciation for the University of West Virginia for gathering us together here like this. And of course, Bonnie's been working on this for a long time. Appreciate her work and her due diligence to carry this through. And also, I think that more of these forums to emphasize the lack of information about the original people of this hemisphere is very deliberate. It's a federal policy. Came around about 1898, 99, 1900. They couldn't kill us. And as the Lakota say, the buffalo stepped in front of the guns and they took the brunt. And it secured us here. And so now for common cause and now for our responsibilities to the future, we must gather our voices and speak to the powers that be, that peace is much better than war. And as the conflicts rage, as you well know, in these past few days, it simply emphasizes the work that we are doing here right now. And just one more thought is that people should understand that all our people, no matter what color you are, we are a family. And we do come in all colors and all sizes, but we're all people, we're family, we're relatives, we're related. And we can change blood anywhere here. We can change blood, can't get any closer than that. So racism has to die here, and we have to take care of that. And all the history that have heard and troubles that we've had, well, like I say, my pal Red said, yesterday's yesterday, today's today, and we carry on collectively now as friends and family. And we work from here for the welfare of those generations coming. And you have to pick your leaders carefully, as I said last night. Pick your leaders carefully. And good luck to all of us.
Yeah, thank you. All the people here that when we have to go back to our communities and we continue kind of just the struggles within our own families and communities. So it's always good. It's almost like it's a little break to educate, and talk with other people, other people's concerns, and come into a learning facility here, where you educate people, the youth, who will be the next leaders. So it's important that we teach them everything as much as we can, and the truth, the hard stuff, the good stuff. When I get home, we had an issue probably about 2 weeks ago. It's about the boarding schools. This young lady was in her classroom in the high school, and a native girl, and she was turning around and talking to one of her friends in the back, and the teacher told her to turn around, and so she wasn't listening, and he told her to turn around again, and I guess around the third time, I don't have the exact words, but basically he said, turn around and sit straight like you were in a boarding school. And that hit a core in our community. We found out about this, and that was probably two weeks ago, Friday. But we were involved in ceremony, so we couldn't take care of it. So we had a meeting with the superintendent there, and the teacher is not working, but because the teacher is tenured and they have unions and all this stuff, and it's like, he said it's very hard to do anything. So that the superintendent is trying to do stuff, but he also is handcuffed by the system. And that system is protecting the teachers. Well, then, and the community is saying, well, what about our kids? Who's protecting them? What rights do they have? So these are the issues that we have to go back to, in our communities. So this comments like that, and this is a teacher. We're having problems with our kids about respect, and now we have a teacher saying something like this, and it's the young people, all they can do is lash out, and we try to tell them, well, this is not the way to resolve some of these things. So what happens, we try to have these cultural sensitivity trainings to a lot of the organizations around the state of New York. We're still there, and still there's people don't know about us, that we're there. We have, I don't know how many communities in the state, 10 or at least 10, and think they don't even know that we're there. So it's a continuous struggle to educate and to mend. I don't know how to say it, to fix that kind of thinking. How do you fix that kind of thinking? And today's world now, you're talking about, you hear all these shootings and these the climate, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, and those things somehow bring communities together. Okay, so now you have climate change. This is a catastrophe. This is going on. We don't feel it, but there are people who are just destroyed their homes. So now is the time to come together. This should bring us together. It's all around. We have to stop this bickering, these countries, these people, this racism, all this stuff. It's going to hit all of us. Nature has no mercy. Doesn't care what color you are or where you're from or what political organization you are. It does what it does. So now is the time to come together as a species, as human beings. And we just hopefully that we can we start here, and it's amazing what you've done here. This event, these few days here. So it's starting here, and we just continue to educate. Thank you.
Do we have any questions?
If you have questions, you can bring them up, or you can type them. If you are on Zoom, you can type them into the Q&A or to the chat. So we do have a couple of questions. The first one is for all of you, from a member of the audience here, who asks, what is your perception of someone who wants to learn more about your tribe and is of the blood, but is not on the rolls of the tribe? Any of you can answer whenever you want.
My answer is we're thankful for every one of those individuals, and that we oftentimes what they will say carries more weight than what we say. And so we welcome those questions, we welcome those people, we welcome education and learning. So more power to them.
For many years before we lowered our blood quantum, excuse me, till we eliminated blood quantum, we had that issue. We had people that were, they were Delaware or Lenape, and they weren't on our rolls, but they were blood. We knew they were, and they would ask a lot of questions, and they would come to the office. And so just what Chief Wallace said as well, we welcome that. We welcome people that come and want to be active in the tribe. And those are, you know, in our case, when we moved to descendancy, those were future leaders that we were helping, you know, people that they're learning things and they're coming and they could possibly be in our government. And so you really want someone who's educated about the tribe to be in the government, and not somebody who isn't, who just walks in and gets elected because. And so I welcome people that ask those questions.
I would encourage those individuals, if they were not enrolled in my tribe, but they were wanting to know more, I would encourage them to come visit with our tribe, come visit with our people, and we're not going to turn anybody away. We're not in a position to, we're Delaware, we're not going to talk to you and tell you we're open arms. We'll be more than happy to educate, and that's what, you know, from all these leaders up here, the main thing I hear is education, education, education. And that's one thing that my tribe that I would do if somebody was not a member but maybe had the blood. I would welcome them with open arms and educate them the best I possibly could.
Well, I'm not sure this exactly applies to the Shawnee tribe because we have a lineal descendancy. So if you are of descent, you are a citizen. So we would encourage anyone that is anyone that's curious about the tribe to learn about the tribe. That applies to people that are, you know, not native or native. But I think if that's the question, that's how I'd answer it. But I also would say, it's a very different thing to be a citizen. It's a very different thing to be a government. And so speaking on, if you think you are of descent and then speak on behalf of that government as if you are a citizen or the government, that's a wholly different topic. So my question is, it's perfectly fine for people to learn about the tribe, but to be cautious in speaking as an authority whenever you lack citizenship.
Okay, so keep questions coming, by the way. So this is a question from someone on the Zoom, and the question is specifically for Chief Glenna Wallace. So the rest of you can relax for a few moments. So I'm just going to read this verbatim. So thank you for telling us about the new Great Council State Park in Ohio that honors Tecumseh. A law passed in December 2022 by the Ohio legislature and signed by Governor DeWine now mandates permission for fracking by oil and gas industry under Ohio's public lands, which includes our public parks, and the bidding process is now beginning. A group of activists, Save Ohio Parks, is trying to generate enough opposition to this process or hold it off until new legislators or a new governor can be elected. Would you consider supporting this effort, or what are your kind of thoughts on that in general?
My thoughts are, I don't have enough information about that to even comment. I'm
Those
not an
are great
authority in
thoughts.
that area.
All right, people, we're running out of questions here. I know. If you want to come up here and read it yourself too, you could do that. I will read it happily. So this question comes from this lovely young lady right here who says, can you speak more about spirit ceremony, star knowledge, and star people?
Well, I think what we found, and it's probably the most important part of our community, is the ceremonies. All of our ceremonies are one of giving thanks and appreciation. We rarely ask for something. We mostly send our appreciation, and the ceremonies that we have around the lunar clock is dedicated to that appreciation. So we're coming into, the Thanksgiving time, the green corn, and the corn is ready now. And so we'll have a ceremony, a green corn, and it'll be a long one, 6 days of speech and of appreciation and community and gathering. Those are long days as well, 4 hours, 5 hours of dance and speech and appreciation, celebration for what we have. So I think that find your ceremonies, find your time to be together and to celebrate the common good for everything. For all of our Indian nations, they all have our ceremonies. We all know what we're talking about when we say ceremonies, because that's what we do, and we do it pretty good too. We know how to celebrate life. That's basically what it is. So after this green corn, now will come what you call Thanksgiving, and then we call a harvest, and there'll be a big one there again. And then we have a big midwinter where we tie the earth together in one bundle, and long 21 days of ceremony, midwinter. Tie the earth in a bundle and give thanks and prepare again, and then, well, here it is, spring again. And so when the sap starts to run, then we give thanks again to the maple and all the trees, and it goes around. So one time when I was asked a question, in a forum somewhat like this, and somebody said, well, Chief, what's your bottom line? And it stopped me. I had to think. I said, that's a profound question you just asked. I said, I really don't know. I don't know how to answer that. And then I understood why I didn't know how to answer, because we don't have a bottom line. We have a circle. It's right around. So there's no bottom line. The bottom line is a reference to, guess what? That's what the driving force of the world is today. That's your bottom line. But it isn't. For us, it goes around, round and around. Doesn't ever stop. It's the seasons of the year. It's our lifetime. It's everything in a circle. So I was able to answer, but it took me some time. It was a good question.
Thank you so much. Do you have a question that you'd like to ask? And then we have two on Zoom, so.
It's a question for the group, for everyone. It feels like in this part of the country with universities and historic sites and governmental organizations that things are finally starting to change. People are starting to kind of wake up and become more aware of Native history. And I am curious if you could envision 25 or 50 years into the future, what a future for your respective tribes or peoples looks like in this region, in terms of presence, education, in school systems, et cetera. What does that look like for you?
Well, for the Delawares, we are constantly trying to have a presence in our homelands back east. Unfortunately, we're in Oklahoma. We don't have a tribal headquarters. We don't even have an acre of land in our homelands, unfortunately. But we are trying to make a presence because we have the issue of these federally recognized tribes on the East Coast that are speaking for us, on behalf of us. So we have to come out here, and that's part of my message to you guys as well is when you communicate is to make sure you're communicating with the federally recognized tribes. There's a lot of these state tribes, these other groups that have formed and has caused us a lot of issues back home. We're talking about grant monies and we're talking about other things that these people are going after, and they're speaking before our names. So I just want to touch on that a little bit. We're trying to make a presence in the homelands. We're trying to, I don't know how that's going, what that looks like, but I'd like to envision 50 years from now that we do have a presence, that maybe some of these universities are opened up to our kids, and we start sending some of our students out this way, and they become familiar with the homelands, get their education, and may move out here, and we may have a presence in 50 years. And that's just my perspective from Lenape.
I think you gave an excellent answer. Very short, I would simply say, I see a difference already today, and in 25 years, I would hope it would continue. I simply say, talk with us rather than talk about us.
If I could add what Chief Killscrow said, there's 400 fake Cherokee tribes, and there's about 80 fake Delaware tribes, and there's 80 some fake Shawnee tribes. So we're already at 560 fake tribes. There's only 570 of some of us nationwide of all tribes. So it's a big problem in terms of federal resources. But as for Shawnee people, we see this as incumbent to come back into their homelands. We're already doing it. Eastern Shawnee, they already own land in some of their homeland states, as do we. We have land in Kentucky, Indiana, Kansas, and of course in Oklahoma. But I see in 25 years, to answer the question directly, where I see us as, I think we should be managing our own sites. I think there's no reason the Shawnee Indian Manual Labor School needs to be seen by a state that doesn't care for it to fully fund it or repair it. I think that there shouldn't be seances in those places. I don't think there should be yoga classes in those places. I think we need to be controlling the narrative at places like Serpent Mound, which I can't even begin to tell this room some of the things that Chief Wallace and I have seen at that site. These need to be managed by Native peoples. We need to make opportunities for ourselves in our homelands. Sometimes I wonder if we don't get burdened by this idea of federal trust property, and we shouldn't act like corporations, because it seems like corporations get more preferential treatment under the law. Maybe we should create economic subdivisions of our tribes, which we are doing, and we will be finding those opportunities to participate in other states and in other venues. And we already see it happening around the country. The Skellam Jamestown tribe in Washington they're selling salmon to China and Japan. So we need to find ways for us to participate in the economic enterprise in our homelands. That's where I see us going.
We, Delaware Nation has a satellite office in Pennsylvania, and we do own land in Pennsylvania. However, I would like to see satellite offices in every state in our homelands. We, and colleges, our office is in Lehigh University and their Indigenous Studies building. And we have a person that's there and she takes calls for Pennsylvania area. I would love to have one in West Virginia. I'd love to have one in Kentucky and all other places. And I think in 50 years, maybe that will happen. I would also like to see this forum, I would like to see it triple in size in 10 years. That would be amazing to have it tripled in size. And to be educating people. We educate you about us, and that you get your education from us, not from fake tribes, as Chief Barnes said. We have a lot of fake tribes that like to try to educate people on us. And I think if you get it straight from us, you get it, it's the truth. So, but that's what I'd like to see.
So I think the first question here on the chat, in some ways you all just answered it, but it asks about kind of the impact of the division of tribes between federal, state, and non-recognized, and what that does. So if there's any other comments you'd like to make about that. It's okay if not. Okay, I can't see your heads. Excellent. Well, we'll take one question live here and then we'll get back to written questions.
It seems like your concept of having someone in the House of Representatives is really a good one. And it seems like you should have a national push for that. And maybe not just one seat, but many tribal seats. And have those seats a voting member. Seems like something you could get going on social media or get Hollywood behind it or something.
Well, Chief Hoskin has been doing a really big push to have Kim Teehee seated. And when I was in DC speaking to the House of Representatives about our delegate, I said, you know, in a perfect world, you would seat all of the delegates that the tribes that have the delegate provision, you would seat all of their delegates at the same time. And so what the House of Representatives said they were going to do was they were going to research and find out what treaties had the delegate provision so they would know how many their delegates there would be. The issue is because we are 3 federally recognized Lenape tribes. It's Delaware Nation, Delaware Tribe, and Stockbridge-Munsee. The Cherokees are 3 federally recognized tribes, the Kituas, the Eastern Band of Cherokees, and the Cherokee Nation. And then the Choctaws also had a delegate provision, and they have 3 different tribes. So the problem would be, would each of the 3 tribes get a delegate, or would it be one delegate and the 3 tribes would have to vote on who that would be? And so the House of Representatives says this is so complicated. And so my thought was we could get the tribal leaders together and uncomplicate this, and we could write a bill and we could say, here it is. Here's what we propose that you do. And it started last year. I just haven't, things take precedence over this. And so we're going to start back again, hopefully in the next couple of months, and start working on it again to get the tribal leaders together to talk about it and see what we're going to do. The ones that have the delegate provision in their treaties.
I think your thought is spot on, because one of the difficulties that we have, all tribes, whether we have that in a treaty or not, is a very simple observation that all of us should know that in the United States, we have 435 representatives, elected representatives, and yet only 85 of those 435 come from any spot that has a tribe located anywhere near it. So our educating the general public, our educating our representatives, our senators is always paramount and is always time consuming. And we're always behind in doing that because as we have term limits, we have new people come on all the time. So it is a problem for us. And you are correct, having some delegates there, even if they aren't voting as Tim Teehee is right now, it is beneficial for her to be there, to be able to attend the committee meetings, to speak there. So the thought is there. We just haven't reached that point yet, but it is an obstacle for us.
Okay, so this next question is for the entire panel or whoever wants to answer. You're not forced to. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the power and significance of place names. Would there be good results from using multiple languages for place names?
What was the answer? I didn't hear.
I certainly can. So the question is really about the power and significance of place names and whether or not we should be moving towards using multiple languages for place names, having dual language signs, that kind of thing.
Could I answer? I'll take a crack at your question. So recently, the city of Miami, where I live, put up a series of welcome signs in all of our languages in town. And so it adds to, we didn't ask them to do that. They did it on their own. So that shows me that they, really genuinely cared. Now, a couple of years prior, they declared what was formerly Columbus Day to be Indigenous Peoples Day in the city of Miami. We didn't ask them to do it, but they did it. And so seeing those things reflected, normalizing our signs in our languages in towns, I want our kids to see that they live in a multi-language world, that they can go through their own towns and see their own words reflected back at them. I think that's the power of doing it. It's in normalizing that we live in a multicultural world, in a multi-linguistic world. So that's what I would hope to get from having that type of endeavor anywhere.
That also shows respect. They have respect for us, we have respect for them. That shows communication, and that's the important part.
Great, and this next question comes from Zoom participants. And first, they have a caveat that if you've already talked about this, they apologize. What is your response to the representation of Native people in film and television increasing, such as with shows like Reservation Dogs or Dark Winds?
The system that you're talking about, the elective system, is an imposition on our traditionals. When we had the leadership, it was run by communities. And the Dawes Act really broke that system. They attacked our system. They attacked the leaders. They attacked everything. And the Dawes Act destroyed the systems that almost all of our nations were running on. Choose our own leaders, how we choose our leaders and their responsibilities. So the Dawes Act was a very serious attack and very effective. We were fortunate at Onondaga and the Six Nations where they couldn't break our system. So we still raise our leaders the old style. It's 1,600 years old now. And that's how we raise our leaders. And but there's very few that have been able to withstand that. And that was because we were based on community. All of our systems was based on community. We worked together, common fields. People used to grow corn, as families and as community gardens. Everybody worked, everybody shared. And you didn't have poor people and you didn't have wealthy people. So everybody was taken care of, and you're always looking around, make sure that everybody's behind you and everybody's in step. So it was a really the community style of life for all of our nations, and the system that runs this world today, which is capitalism. That's exactly the opposite. It's an individual, individual, and it isolates people. And so it's come to a head now, and when they came to us in 1775 and they said, we want to make a union like yours. Good, we said, that's a good idea. And they said, well, the first principle is to share, like I said. So today you buy a share. You flip the principle right on its tail. So the common family and the extended family as well, because the responsibility of our people was not just looking out for human beings, it was looking out for the animals, it was looking out for the trees, it was looking out for all life. That was a responsibility we did. And one time listening to a leader from Canada, he was speaking, and he was a very traditional person and couldn't speak English very well, but he was doing his best. And when he said, we have to take care of our families and the animals. And if you weren't understanding what he said, when he said animals, you might think about cows and goats and sheep and stuff like that, but he was talking about the bears, and he was talking about the wolves, and he was talking about all of the animals that really is our responsibility. It's our family. They are family. They're not wild. One of our grandmothers said to me one time, we don't have a word for wild. There's no word for wild in our language. She said, the closest I can come to that is free. Free. And that's our perception. It's a very inclusive style of life we had here. We included everything that walks and swims and flies. And when we give our thanks, that's what we include, everything. It's our responsibility. It's not just people.
Thank you. We have one more question from the Zoom, and that question comes from Chris Cheney, who was here earlier. And he asks, how can we get the word out about the World Heritage Site designation for Newark Earthworks? Will tribes conduct a ceremony to commemorate this historic event?
Well, I would say that we have already started on that. We have made a design that is the symbol that will be used for World Heritage. This entire week is Celebration Week in Ohio. Day before yesterday, I believe it was, I was in Fort Ancient. Remember, there are 8 mounds that are in this nomination, and so we had a celebration festivity all day long in Fort Ancient. Saturday is Celebration Day in Chillicothe. Sunday is Celebration Day at Newark. So they are already thinking about that. We welcome any suggestions and welcome any ideas of how you could help us. We've started, obviously, the ways of, we have the t-shirts and we have the sweatshirts and we have the bags and those items, but we obviously didn't plan that before we had the designation of World Heritage. So we do need to get that out, and we need people to celebrate everywhere. And primarily, I think we want people to know that they probably have places that are worthy of this as well, and it can be done. But we welcome your suggestions.
Okay, we have one more from Zoom that asks kind of a question of a lot of people who grew up in West Virginia were kind of told that by the time Europeans arrived, West Virginia was devoid of a population of indigenous peoples. And so other than events like this today, how can we change that narrative and what can we do to change that perception?
So I think having a curious mind and asking questions about like ancient village sites. So in Kentucky, there's village sites that go to 1650 to 1700, and they exist for 800 years. And the archaeologists in the room would call those Fort Ancient sites. And these sites exhibit the same features that you see in Shawneetown during the 18th century. And so archaeologists are loath to call those Shawnee villages because nobody was spotted being in that space, living on that space, saying they were Shawnee. But so by the time you had Western encroachment, there were Shawnees who were already, not, there was $25 scalp bounties in the Ohio, in the Cincinnati Enquirer in, I believe it was 1803, $25 for a scalp bounty with the, I believe it said with the left ear a pendant. So, that way we couldn't double charge, couldn't take in, cut a scalp in half and make twice as much money. So what does a Shawnee scalp look like as opposed to an Ottawa or a Chippewa scalp? So it was literal terror. Our relative, Logan, some of the Logans now are married into our families on Shawnee sides. And so we share that ancestry. We went to war with Logan because of what happened to his family. When we heard what happened to Logan's family, Shawnees, Delawares, and Haudenosaunee people said, no, we're going to band together. This is terrible. It was a time of terror. It wasn't empty land. It was a time of terror. People were trying to go to sleep at night. But you couldn't go to sleep because somebody may come in to collect your scalp for $25. Natives weren't paying each other $25. Who was paying $25 for scalps? So this was what was going on in these areas, in the Piedmont regions of Maryland, West Virginia, into Ohio, and into Kentucky. It was, it was a time of lawlessness.
We have one more. I keep telling you we have one more, and then there's another, but we have one more. So this question from Edward Lowe says, Chief Barnes and President Dotson both expressed interest in managing lands and tribal interests in Kentucky. How can physical scientists who are interested in working with tribal nations to understand environmental change in their traditional homelands respectfully engage with the nation's interests? Is it culturally acceptable to send a cold email to speakers of this panel?
Absolutely, I get them all the time. I get emails all the time. Yes, communicate with the tribal leader, know who the tribal leader is, make sure that you have it correct. I get a lot of things for tribal leaders that were previous tribal leaders, or they'll call me Chairman Dotson or Dobson, or they spell my first name wrong. But yeah, I get them all the time that say, President Dotson, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so, can I contact you about something? And I usually respond back, or I send it to my TIPO and she responds back. But absolutely, you could cold email me, that would be fine.
And I always think the most beneficial way is to develop a relationship.
Yeah.
Like we'll have a relationship with Dr. Stephen Warren at Iowa. He and I have written together. And there's others like David Costi. He's a linguist at Miami University, works with Miami Nation. But there's also Gwen Henderson at Western Kentucky University, works with our Kentucky Archaeological Council. We work with them. So we have these professional relationships, but they're always in projects that are mutually beneficial, where they want, we're working together on a project. So finding interesting projects to work together on, that's always one way.
How do we know we're getting a recognized person?
I'm going to repeat that just so everyone can hear. She asked, how do we know we're getting the right person, right? How do we know Am I summarizing correctly? How do we know that the email is going to who it should be?
Normally, our websites have who it is on there, that the president and the email address or the TIPO.
The Federal List Act, go to the federally recognized List Act on the web. It'll have the real contact information.
Right, that last part of that exchange was asking about, you've mentioned all of these tribes that are perhaps less than ethically calling themselves members of certain tribes. And the concern was that people might end up contacting them rather than the tribes themselves. And the response was to start with the federal role of tribes.
In the process of us raising leaders, it runs, starting with the family, with the clan itself, say the Wolf clan. And they have just lost their leader, have to raise another one. And so the community, the Wolf family, which is large, extended family, meets and they discuss who they would like to present. And they have to agree by consensus. There's no voting. Everybody has to agree. And then if they agree, then they will take that, the clan mother and one of her, she will take a witness with her. They will request a private meeting with the leaders of the chiefs. And this is the only private meeting that we have. And this person is presented to them. And they must agree by consensus that this person is the right one for this position. If they don't agree, you got to start back again. But if they do agree, okay, so good luck, you do agree. Now you have a real candidate for this title, this position. Now you send a runner over to the other house. As Sid was talking about our houses, you send a runner to the other house and we say, we have a candidate for this title, but we don't say the name. We don't tell them who it is. We keep that secret because we don't want people sniping ahead of time. And so we have a candidate for a title and they say, good news. And because we have lost a person on our side of the house, they do all the work. They choose the speakers, they choose the time, the place, and everything. Then they send a runner back to us. Here's the time, here's the speakers, here's the place. And then it's up to us to send runners to all of the 6 nations, to the communities, and give them the date and the time to meet. And at that time, then the big houses meet, the Mohawks and the Senecas, and they all meet in their respective houses, and then they come together what we call a condolence. And this person is brought then in front of the 6 nation. And they don't know who he is. And that's the time that the clan mother will then reveal who this person is. It's the first time. But he's been judged all this time, all the way up. And so now he comes for inspection by the whole 6 nation. And they can refuse somebody may know something about him or whatever. So she presents in front of the Grand Council. And so the elder brothers discuss it, and the younger brothers discuss it, and they go through the whole process of raising leadership before they come to the conclusion of this person. So it's all day. You better have a good breakfast because you're going to be there all day while they remind you of the laws and the rules of the Confederation. Then finally, as the sun is moving down towards the horizon, the speaker will say to the clan mother, bring forth your candidate. And that's when he's brought forth, and that's when you see who he is. And then he's inspected by both sides there. And if they don't agree, you got to do this all over again. That's how you raise a leader. you don't have a vote. It's a consensus. So that's how these positions are, and Tadadaho here is the only one that we as the sitting chiefs choose. But the rest of the time, it's always the women. The women basically are the ones that carry that responsibility, and they have the authority to remove that title for any misconduct. They can't tell him what to do. They don't direct you as to what to say. As I was told, you're putting in there to use your head. That's what you're putting in there for, but behave yourself. And they oversee your conduct, and they can remove you. And I've seen that done, and it's not happy. So it's an old process, and our nations, all of our nations had similar process. So when they imposed the elective system, the Dawes Act, they broke down our system, but they weren't able to do it with us, so we still maintain the old style. But not many else.
So we have no more questions, but I do want to say there were a number of people who put words of thanks and appreciation in the chat and wanted to say to all of you, thank you so much for participating and how much they valued your expertise and your knowledge. So I'm going to turn things over to Bonnie now.
I'm just going to take the mic for a second, and I wanted to ask a question. It sort of ties in with what President Dotson was saying about establishing a place in your homelands that could be a point of contact and a relay, or a place for people to come when they have business out east or something like that. So that's really good food for thought. Thank you for mentioning that. But I also had a question, because I know a couple of people out here in West Virginia. I'm from the Midwest. I have friends in Wisconsin and so on, and in Iowa, who have decided that they want to deed their property to a tribe. They feel that, yeah. So I was like, just call Brad. Call Brad.
No, deed it to us first. All right.
Well, ideally in Iowa, for example, my friend in Wisconsin is Ho-Chunk. She's already decided it's in Madison, and that's the designated Ho-Chunk land. But can you talk about that for a moment? Have you had folks do that? I know the Pawnee Nation has had land deeded from, Farmer in Nebraska. Kansas people have done so. We do show the video in class. I'm looking around to see which of my students are left, about the church property that went back to the Delaware in Ohio and so on. Very moving, story about that, right?
I don't know about that
Yeah.
story.
Do you remember that, Jack? When we, well, they marched back in there. There was a small church that was actually owned by the tribe, and I believe there were a couple of graves there, if I'm not mistaken, but that reverted back to, I'm almost certain it was Delaware, not Potawatomi or some other group, but I thought it was Delaware. Anyway, aside from that, well, how can people go about this? And I think some people thought, well, if I deed my farm to, let's say, Eastern Shawnee or maybe Shawnee tribe, but probably Eastern Shawnee, just teasing you, would that land be sold? Could they envision that the tribe would retain that land? Would it go into trust even though it's out of state? Or you're the experts on this, so I'm kind of bumbling my question, but what would be some advice for an individual who's saying, I really would like this, I'd like my property to go back to the Native people who were here before, often their settler ancestors?
Well, Delaware Nation was given.
I think the mic might be off. There you go.
There, sorry. Delaware Nation was given 11 acres in Chester County about 20 years ago. And so we have kept that land. We have never developed it. And about 5 years ago, we found out that it has invasive bamboo on it. So we have been paying to have that invasive bamboo taken out. And I didn't realize how expensive that was, by the way. It's very expensive. But that was given to us 20 years ago. And then 2 years ago, we were contacted by a lady named Carol McCloskey, and she had some land that had ancestors buried on it. It was a historical site, and she deeded that land to us. And her attorney worked with our attorney and with the land trust, and it was all deeded to us. It's 5.6 acres, and no, we normally do not sell it. We normally try to preserve it. We want to keep lands in our homeland, so we don't plan on selling any of it. Putting it in trust, we haven't talked about putting it in trust
Okay.
and how you would have to do it, because it was never, this land was never in trust.
Yeah,
So we would have to get the governor of Pennsylvania to agree with that.
I see. Brad, do you want to, or I should say Chief Kilscrow and use your formal
No,
title?
it's fine. Currently, we are working with a individual in Pennsylvania who has a 10-acre farm with a house and a barn, and it's a nice deal. It's that they're so entwined to the how they feel about the native, the Lenape who's been there. As soon as they have wrote a will, and we're working on the process right now to get the deed and everything coordinated, particularly to the right directions and attorneys and stuff. But we're looking to acquire some land in our homelands for the first time. They always tell us they're not making any more land, and that's probably the most truest thing that you could possibly think. And so we've been acquiring land back in Oklahoma as much as possible, because we actually don't have a presence. We have a presence in Oklahoma, but we would like to, with this opportunity we have with this individual, upon their death, are going to deed us this land. We are very excited, and we've been working with them and their attorneys and our attorneys to make this work.
Well, that's good to know. I think it's good for people who are considering this to know that there's a pathway that already exists for that transfer of land to take place, because I do think there are good-hearted people who are justice-minded, who feel that really it should go back to the Native people if it's within their control to make that happen.
We have 500 acres in Kentucky that was left to us by an individual that we did not know. That individual indicated that he did not have heirs, and he had researched the land, and he believed that Shawnees had lived there before, and so he actually did research unbeknownst to any of us of the 3 tribes, and he left the 500 acres to us. We have no intention of selling it. We lease it for farming, which is what he was doing as well.
Very good to know these things. Thank you. Were you going to say something, Ben? Did you want to add something, Chief Barnes? And then we'll toss it over for the commentary.
We purchased a parcel of land, several hundred acres in Kentucky. It's a donut hole within the National Forest in Kentucky.
Okay.
And it was going to be developed into like a McMansion. So there was an archaeological site of Shawnee Village there. So the family that owned it needed to sell it, wanted to sell it, but they hated to see McMansions get bulldozed into it. So we was able to come in and help them save the land. And we had another instance in southern Indiana with a pair, and they were landowners, and they wanted a life estate. So each parcel of land is going to have its own different story and its own different legal situation. So the 2 gentlemen in Indiana still live on that property and will till the day they die. And they wanted some covenants that we're never going to timber the land or use it for economic development. And our idea for that land has always been a NAGPR cemetery, Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, because there's no place in Indiana for us to go privately take care of our ancestral remains that are found in Indiana or that are on university shelves. But Indiana law is right now a problem, so we're working the Indiana process on trying to get the state laws on cemeteries changed so that NAGPR remains aren't considered, it remains in the same way that a normal modern burial is.
Thank you very much. Well, what a wonderful panel.